What if a child whispered something so small, so quiet, that the whole world nearly missed it? It was a rainy Thursday morning when Ms. Delilah Rowan, a third-grade teacher at Maplewood Elementary, first heard the words that would shatter her peace and crack open a truth too many had ignored for too long. Delilah was stapling up new reading posters when a small voice behind her said, "Miss Rowan, it hurts when I sit." She didn't even turn around at first, but the tone, flat, not whiny, made her spine straighten. When she turned, there stood little Nova Grace Holloway, 6 years old, small for her age, clutching her drawing pad like it was the only solid thing in her life. Her lips were pressed tight, but her knuckles were bone white. Delilah knelt down slowly, meeting the girl's gaze. "What did you say, sweetheart?" Nova looked at the floor. Her voice was barely there. "It hurts when I sit." Let me pause and say this. I've heard hundreds of excuses from kids. I have a tummy ache. I lost my homework. My brother did it. But there's something chilling about those 5 words. It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Like pain had become normal to her. Delilah guided Nova gently away from the other kids. "Let's talk over here, okay?" They went to the reading rug tucked in the corner, away from curious eyes. Nova stood there, tense, unmoving, her arms clutching her sketch pad so tightly it might tear in two. Delilah asked softly, "Did something happen? Did you fall?" Nova shook her head, then nodded, then stopped. I I slipped in the kitchen," she whispered quickly, as if someone had told her what to say. Delilah's gut clenched. "Can I take a look?" "Just to help." Nova hesitated, then rolled up her sleeve, slowly. What Delilah saw stopped her heart. Faint bruises, in the shape of fingers. Fading yellow-green, high on the arm where most kids don't bruise unless someone grabs too hard. Delilah kept her face calm, but inside she was screaming. "I want to say something here as a teacher and as a human being. We are trained to recognize signs, but training doesn't prepare you for the moment it's real. The moment you know." After Nova returned to her desk, walking like every step was a risk, Delilah made her notes. Evasive, upper arm bruises, avoiding chairs. At lunch, she watched Nova, laughing too hard at nothing, always saying yes, ma'am, even when no one asked anything. She flinched when a boy bumped her elbow, and then she did something that broke Delilah's heart. She smiled right after, like she'd done something wrong and was trying to apologize for existing. That afternoon, Delilah went to the principal's office. Principal Corinne Maddox looked up from her emails. "I'm concerned about one of my students," Delilah said. "Nova Holloway." Corinne's eyes narrowed. "What kind of concern?" "She told me it hurts when she sits. She avoided chairs. I saw bruises, shaped like fingers. She said she slipped in the kitchen. I don't think that's true." Principal Maddox sighed. "Delilah, we have to be careful. We don't want to jump to conclusions." That phrase, "we have to be careful," it haunted Delilah later, because being careful never saved a child. She left that office with a pit in her stomach. That night, sitting on her couch with nothing but the hum of her refrigerator and the sound of her own thoughts, Delilah opened the Georgia-mandated reporter guidelines again, and she realized something. She didn't need permission to report. She just needed to believe what she saw. And she did. The next morning, she brought Nova a fresh sketch pad and new crayons. "Draw anything you want," she said softly. Nova didn't speak. She didn't sit. She stood beside her desk and began to draw. Her hand moved with quiet urgency. When she handed Delilah the picture, it changed everything. A wooden chair, a red stain underneath it, a belt, and a tiny girl with wide black eyes. "Who is this?" Delilah asked, her voice trembling. Nova stared at the floor. "Just once," she whispered. Delilah called her friend Lisa Kendall, the school's counselor. Lisa studied the picture, then looked Delilah in the eye and said 6 words that confirmed everything. "She's telling you the truth." That evening, Delilah picked up the phone and dialed the CPS hotline. Her hands shook as she spoke, but her voice didn't. "Nova Grace Holloway, 6 years old, bruises, fear of sitting, emotionally withdrawn, evidence in drawings." She hung up the phone, and cried because she remembered a time years ago when her own sister had said something like that to their mother, and no one had listened. But this time, someone had. The next morning, Nova handed Delilah another drawing. It was of a woman in a red cape standing in front of a closed door, arms wide open. Below it, in shaky pencil, she'd written, "You help me fly." Delilah didn't sleep that night. Not truly. She drifted in and out of half-dreams where Nova's voice echoed down endless school hallways. "It hurts when I sit." The next day during class, Delilah brought Nova's drawing to Principal Maddox. Corinne stared at it. "It's just a drawing, Delilah. Kids imagine things." "No," Delilah said quietly. "This isn't imagination. This is memory. She's trying to tell us. This is the only way she knows how." Corinne glanced at the drawing again and softened slightly. "Did you already report it?" Delilah nodded. "Last night." "Well, that's your right." But she still added, "Be cautious. Allegations like this, they have consequences." Delilah left the office with her jaw tight and her fists clenched. Consequences? You want to talk about consequences? Try living inside the silence of a child who's too afraid to sit down. Later during spelling time, Delilah leaned close to Nova and asked softly, "Would you like to sit today?" Nova shook her head quickly. "No, thank you." "Is someone hurting you at home?" Delilah asked gently. Nova's pencil stopped moving. She didn't answer, but she didn't deny it either. At dismissal, Delilah walked Nova to the curb. A black SUV idled there. A tall man stepped out. "Hi there," he said. "You must be Miss Rowan." Delilah extended her hand. "Yes, and you are?" "Calvin Holloway, Nova's stepdad." His handshake was firm. Too firm. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Nova tells me you're real nice." "She's a wonderful student," Delilah said. "Come on, girl," he barked toward the car. "We don't got all day." Nova flinched. She rushed past Delilah and climbed into the car without looking back. And that's when Delilah knew. Knew in her bones. Nova was trying to survive. That night, Delilah sat in silence staring at the little girl's drawing. The red cape, the closed door, the wide arms. She whispered aloud to no one, "No more silence." Not this time. Because if there's one thing every child deserves, it's someone who listens louder than their silence. There's something you start to notice when a child doesn't feel safe. They don't move like other kids. They don't sit. They don't play. They don't rest. They survive. That was Nova. The Monday after Delilah filed the CPS report, things seemed almost normal. The kids chattered about dinosaurs and juice boxes. The fluorescent lights buzzed. And Nova was at her desk, standing, of course, sketchpad open, coloring with quiet intensity. Delilah approached her gently. "Nova, sweetie, would you like to sit today?" Nova gave a small, practiced smile. "No, thank you." Her voice had the strange weight of someone twice her age. Not tired, just resigned. And that, more than anything, told Delilah the abuse hadn't started last week. It had roots. At lunch, Delilah spotted her again, laughing too loud, then retreating, jumping at a dropped tray, sitting briefly, then standing too quickly. Later that day, Delilah brought her latest concerns to Lisa Kendall. "She's still standing, still drawing dark things. I think she's telling us more, but it's not in words." Lisa agreed to meet with Nova after school. That's when it happened. Nova drew something that made Lisa's hands tremble. It wasn't a belt this time, or a red stain. It was a small, square room, no windows, a single light bulb, and inside a tiny girl curled into a ball. "What's this, Nova?" Lisa asked gently. Nova didn't look up. "The closet," Lisa blinked. "What closet, honey?" Nova's lip quivered. "His." Lisa and Delilah locked eyes. This wasn't just bruises. This was confinement. They were now looking at a pattern of punishment, isolation, a child being broken in silence. The next day, Delilah quietly asked Nova's older brother, Jalen, to stop by the counselor's office. He was 10, a tall, soft-spoken kid who always looked like he'd seen too much. When Lisa asked if everything was okay at home, Jalen lowered his eyes. "I can't talk about that." Delilah spoke softly. "We're not trying to get anyone in trouble. We just want Nova to be safe. And you too." He hesitated, then whispered, "He puts her in the laundry room." At night, she sleeps on the floor. Lisa froze. "Does your mom know?" she asked. "She says it's because Nova misbehaves, but she never misbehaves. She just stops talking. She stares a lot. She doesn't cry loud anymore." That sentence hit Delilah like a punch. She doesn't cry loud anymore. That's what happens when pain becomes routine. The body saves energy. It stops sounding alarms that no one answers. After Jalen left, Lisa whispered, "This is bigger than we thought." Delilah nodded. "We need to act now, before she disappears into silence forever." That afternoon, when the black SUV pulled up again, Delilah crouched beside Nova. "If anything happens tonight, you can call me, okay?" Nova nodded quickly, then whispered something. "I wrote your number in my sock." Delilah felt her throat tighten. Good girl. That night, she kept her phone at her bedside, volume on max. She didn't sleep. Not really. At 2:14 a.m., a text lit up her screen. "He's mad. She's in the cold room. Help, no name." But it didn't need one. Jalen. Delilah called Lisa immediately. Lisa's cousin worked in emergency response for Fulton County's Department of Family and Children's Services. Within 30 minutes, 2 officers and a DFCS investigator arrived at the Holloway residence. Delilah waited in her car, breath fogging up the windshield, praying. Then, the door opened, and Nova emerged, wrapped in a blanket. No shoes, no coat. She looked around, saw Delilah, ran. And in that moment, that image of a 6-year-old sprinting barefoot into a teacher's arms, the whole world changed. "I remembered your number," Nova whispered. "He almost found it." Delilah clutched her tight. "You're safe. You're safe." Jalen followed close behind, carrying a small toy in a backpack. He looked at Delilah and said, "I'm sorry I waited." Delilah shook her head, tears in her voice. "You were brave." Marcus Holloway was placed into custody that night, but the road was far from over. The next morning, Delilah stood in her empty classroom. The sun rose like nothing had happened. The kids returned to normal routines, but her heart had been rewired. Maya's seat, still empty, was now a symbol, not just of what was lost, but what had been saved in time. That afternoon, Lisa came in with news. "Nova and Jalen are in emergency foster care," she said. "They're safe, for now." Delilah nodded. Her heart was raw. Her hands trembled when she held her coffee cup, but her eyes were steady. Later, she received an email from Evelyn Monroe, Nova's temporary foster mom. "Nova wants to send you a letter. She asked if she could. She wants to say something." 3 days later, it arrived. A folded piece of lined paper, written in soft pencil. "Dear Miss Rowan, thank you for the new crayons. I sleep in a soft bed now. We have a cat named Muffin. I draw in color now. Sometimes I draw you with wings. I think angels don't need capes. Love, Nova." Delilah wept. Not just from sadness, but from gratitude. From the raw joy of being the person who heard a whisper and didn't turn away. What do you do when the monster doesn't go away? When they slip through the cracks of a system that's supposed to stop them? Delilah Rowan had thought the nightmare would end the night Nova ran into her arms. But the monster, Marcus Holloway, was just getting started. 3 days after his arrest, Delilah received a call from Lisa Kendall. "He's out," Lisa said. Her voice was tight, controlled. Delilah's stomach dropped. "Out? Posted bail. The protective order's in place, but that only matters if someone enforces it." Delilah didn't say anything at first. She sat on the edge of her bed, clutching the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Then she asked the one question that burned through her. "Does Nova know?" "She will soon. Evelyn's doing everything she can to prepare her." Delilah ended the call and stared out the window for a long time. The sun was shining, the sky wide and blue. A betrayal. Because how could the world still look normal when something so wrong was happening? That night, she lit the candle she always kept on her windowsill. Nova's Lighthouse, as the girl had once called it. She placed Nova's latest drawing beside it, a girl on a hill holding a red balloon, with words written beneath, "You kept the light on." But Delilah knew the flame might not be enough anymore, so she called Lisa. We need to organize, she said. Not just you and me, everyone. Lisa didn't hesitate. You want to build a wall? No, Delilah replied. A shield. And so began the Guardian Initiative, a grassroots network of teachers, counselors, parents, and social workers across the district. They started with 10 members at Maplewood Elementary. Within a week, that number doubled. They created a protocol for red flags, a contact tree, a safe word system for kids. Quiet, invisible, but powerful. We're not trying to replace CPS or the police, Delilah told them at the first meeting in the library. We're trying to catch what they miss, because children can't wait for someone to care. One teacher, a young woman named Miss Dawkins, stood and shared something that silenced the room. My sister was Nova once. No one helped her. No one believed her. If you'd been her teacher back then, she might have made it. Delilah didn't know what to say, so she just nodded and promised herself she'd never stop listening. But Marcus Holloway was still out there. 3 nights later, Delilah came home to find a gray stuffed rabbit sitting on her porch. Weather-worn, familiar. It was Nova's, one she hadn't brought to school in weeks. Delilah didn't pick it up. She called the police. They came, took statements, noted that the restraining order hadn't been broken technically. No direct contact, no forced entry. But Delilah knew what it was. A warning. She didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window, hand on her phone, heart thudding like a war drum. At 3:12 a.m., she heard it. 3 sharp whistles outside her window. She didn't look out. She just dialed 911. Again, by the time the police arrived, nothing. No figure, no footprints, just that familiar chill of being watched. The next day, Delilah and Lisa met in private. This has to go public, Lisa said. Dana Knox will run it. She's been waiting for the green light. Delilah hesitated. Won't it put me in more danger? Lisa's eyes were fierce. You're already in danger. But if we stay silent, he wins. Delilah nodded. Okay, let's light it up. The story ran the next morning. Headline, Teacher targeted after saving abused student. Stalker evades the system. Delilah's name was in the byline. Her face blurred. Nova's name changed for privacy. But the truth blazed through every paragraph. How a little girl whispered, "It hurts when I sit." How the system hesitated. How the monster walked free. The public reaction was overwhelming. Parents showed up at the school, hugging Delilah. Local businesses offered support. Social workers emailed saying they'd experienced the same failures. One note arrived in Delilah's classroom, scribbled in purple marker, "You're our light. Keep shining." Room 4. B, but not everyone celebrated. An anonymous letter appeared in her school mailbox. "You took mine. I'll take yours." The handwriting was jagged. The message, unmistakable. The school brought in security. The district issued vague statements about staff safety and awareness. But Delilah knew policy didn't protect. People did. So she pushed the Guardian Initiative harder. Weekly meetings became district-wide forums. More schools joined. They began drafting recommendations for state-level change. Then something extraordinary happened. Senator Avery Langston, a fierce advocate for child safety, reached out. "I want to propose a bill," she said, "named after your student, the NOVA Act, a mandate for faster CPS response, stronger protections, more teacher autonomy to report abuse. And we want you to speak at the Capitol." Delilah's breath caught. "Will she be protected?" "Always," the senator promised. "We'll change all identifying details. But her story, her courage, is the reason this matters." Delilah said yes. The week leading up to the hearing, she didn't sleep much. She practiced her speech over and over. Then on Thursday night, just hours before she was due to speak, she heard it again. The knock. 3 soft taps at the back window. She froze. When she looked out, nothing. But on her back step lay a torn photograph. Half of her classroom, half burned. Scrawled on the back in ink, "Tick, tick, teacher." She didn't hesitate. She called Lisa, called the senator, called the police, and then she put on her blazer, packed her speech, and drove to the Capitol. Delilah Rowan stood on the steps of the Georgia State Capitol in the early spring sun, her palms damp, her heart steady. Inside her folder was the speech she had rewritten a dozen times, and Nova's drawing of the hill and red balloon folded gently like a prayer. Above the balloon, Nova had written, "Some mountains move." This was one of those days. The rotunda buzzed with reporters, state aides, and quiet murmurs. Teachers from across the district had come in support. Social workers, counselors, even parents who'd read the story online and felt something stir inside them. But this wasn't just Delilah's moment. This was for every child who ever whispered instead of screamed. Senator Avery Langston introduced her with a quiet reverence. "We are here today because a child whispered and someone listened. And that whisper, fragile and faint, moved hearts. Now, let it move laws." Delilah stepped to the podium, the soft murmur in the room fading into silence. She began simply, "I'm not a politician. I'm not an activist. I'm a teacher." She looked around, locking eyes with a few people in the front row. "My job is to notice what's missing, what's wrong, what's unsaid." And one day a little girl looked up at me and whispered, "It hurts when I sit." Those 5 words were enough. They had to be. Because if we're waiting for bruises to scream louder than voices, we're already too late. She held up the drawing. "This is Nova's story. She's safe now. But she had to endure silence, fear, confinement, and bruises that match fingers. And when I tried to report it, when I did everything right, the system still made me hesitate." Delilah's voice cracked slightly, but she didn't stop. "She drew this after we rescued her. It's a mountain. And in the middle of it, a woman reaching down with a balloon. Nova believes I helped her climb. But what she doesn't know is that every time a child finds their voice, they move the mountain for all of us." The room erupted in applause. That evening, the clip of her testimony went viral. Teachers across the country sharing it under the tag number, "Some Mountains Move." But Marcus Holloway hadn't moved. Not yet. That same night, while Delilah sat at home eating cold takeout, her doorbell rang. When she looked outside, her porch was empty, except for a crumpled child's drawing, a red balloon slashed in half. Under it, a single sentence in black ink. "You don't win." Delilah called the police. Again. But this time something had changed. The DA had read her testimony, seen the footage, the pattern of stalking, the messages, the threat, the burner phone, the stuffed animal. A warrant was issued immediately. And this time, no bail. Marcus was caught 2 days later, hiding in a motel off of 85. In his backpack, Nova's missing sock with Delilah's number scribbled inside, printed maps, a copy of the school's calendar. This wasn't just stalking. This was escalation. This was intent. Delilah sat in court, watching him as the judge denied bail. Watching as Nova's drawing was entered into evidence. Watching as her own voice, finally, was taken seriously. When it was over, she stepped outside into a cool spring breeze. Lisa stood beside her. "You did it." Delilah shook her head gently. "Nova did." Later that week, Delilah was invited to speak at the unveiling of the Nova Act, now officially signed into Georgia law. It included emergency CPS response within 24 hours of a verified report, mandatory retraining for school staff on trauma indicators, empowerment for teachers to report directly without fear of reprisal, funding for in-school mental health support staff, creation of a statewide Guardian Network pilot program. The logo was Nova's drawing, the mountain, the balloon. The words beneath it, "Some mountains move," but nothing prepared Delilah for what came next. A letter arrived at the school, no return address. Inside, a handmade card in bright crayon colors. "Dear Miss Rowan, we have a tree in our foster yard. I tied a red balloon to it. Every time it blows, I remember you are the wind that made me fly. Love, Nova." Delilah sat at her desk for a long time that day, holding the card against her chest. Later, she added it to a box in her home, a growing treasure of notes, sketches, poems, thank you letters from students. Among them was Jalen's most recent poem. "She stood when I whispered. She fought when I hid. She lit the candle. Now I light it for others." It was titled Lighthouse. But the story didn't end there. The Guardian initiative expanded across the district. Other schools adopted the protocols. Other teachers began forming networks. In rural counties, new groups formed. A whisper had become a roar. Then came the press conference at the Capitol lawn. Delilah stood beside Senator Langston, Lisa, Evelyn, and even Jordan, Jalen, now an honorary student poet. A new mural had been unveiled nearby. A lighthouse rising from waves, dozens of red balloons in the sky, and the faint silhouette of a child's whisper across the background. That night, Nova came to visit Delilah's home for the first time since everything happened. She was different now. Taller, stronger, her eyes still deep but no longer hollow. She walked up the porch steps with steady feet. Delilah opened the door, smiling. "Hey, superstar." Nova held something behind her back. "I brought you something," she said, grinning shyly. It was a framed painting, Nova's latest. A field of lighthouses, red balloons drifting up. In the middle, a teacher and a girl standing side by side. Nova pointed at the girl. "She's not scared anymore." Delilah knelt beside her. "You made her brave." "No," Nova whispered. "She made me visible." The candle in the window flickered as the sun set, but its light didn't dim, not anymore.